There are some white people and non-black people who seem to have an issue with Barack Obama being the president of these United States. Now, Barack Obama is our first black president, and that's rubs some people the wrong way. Well, I have this to say to those people: you elected this man to be your president, so you have no one to be angry at but yourself. This political process is basically where we go. It's supposed to be democratic, and everybody goes to vote for delegates to be a part of the electoral college. Now, Barack Obama couldn't be president unless he received the majority of the vote. And he received the majority of that vote two times in 2008 and 2012. And I say to most of those people who have an issue with Barack Obama being our president, if you didn't want him to be president, you should have headed to the polls and went and go voted for either John McCain or Mitt Romney. Now, if your candidate lost, your candidate lost, and it would be the same way if one of these Republicans had won. Now, I had my issues with George W. Bush when he was in office, and I have my issues with Barack Obama as well. But I respect his position as president of these United States. I may not like his policies, I may not agree with his policies, but I still respect him as the president of the United States. And if you didn't want him to be president, you shouldn't have voted for him. So I listen to all these racists talking about, how angry they are and how upset they are about the state of the United States. And again, you can't blame all of this on Barack Obama. And the only person, most of these people who are so angry at Barack Obama for being president, and they're sitting there talking about niggers and they're talking about how they want to hurt black people and how they want to make black people pay. Well, you need to look in the mirror. The person that you're only hurting is yourself, because if you try to attack black people, how does that help you? I mean, the state that America's in is not due to black people. We did not destroy the U.S. economy. No, that was not black people. Black people are 12% of the population. Black people are about 20 million of the 300 million Americans in this country. So we do not control the banks. We do not control the Wall Street. We do not control the stock market. We don't control the real estate market. We don't own most of the infrastructure in this country. If you want to be angry at someone, don't be angry at black people. Be angry at the rich white people who created this financial mess, I say, 30 years ago, when it started with credit cards. If you really want to be angry at people, go be angry at Visa and MasterCard for issuing credit cards to people who weren't ready for credit. And this was done during the Reagan era, because before then, credit was next to impossible again. But starting with the late 80s, early 90s, pretty much anybody could get credit, even a dog. And I remember watching news reports where dogs got credit cards. So if you want to get angry at somebody, get angry at the credit card companies. If you really want to get angry at someone, again, get angry at these mortgage companies, which began issuing these really bad mortgages to people who really weren't ready for home ownership. And this was one of the big things that led to the collapse of the American economy. And everybody's so mad at looking at Barack Obama, and that's a deflection, but they're not looking at themselves and how they went out and got mortgages they knew they weren't ready for. I mean, a guy making $35,000 a year is not ready for a $200,000 a year mortgage on a home. A lot of white Americans don't want to look at that part, and how they were so greedy and they took mortgages for homes they could not afford and were far beyond their salaries. They don't also want to look at these mortgage companies which issued them mortgages that they knew the person wasn't ready for. And the only reason why they issued those mortgages is because they wanted to have big sales numbers. So nobody wants to look at that part of why this economy is messed up. And they also don't want, and the whole thing is that you have people, again, making $30,000 a year, $20,000 a year. At that stage, you're pretty much at the apartment stage, because home ownership, again, is a whole different ball of wax. Again, what you're doing is you're buying, when you buy a home, you have to pay a water bill, a full light bill, which is maybe $300 or $400 a month, garbage pickup, property tax, insurance. And we had people buying homes, again, and their salaries were not ready for home ownership. They weren't ready for home ownership. And we've saturated the market with a lot of these bad mortgages out here, which a lot of people thought, oh, I'm paying this little payment in the beginning, and then 2 or 3 years later, here comes the balloon payment, and the rates shoot up, and they weren't ready for that. And that who can we blame for that? We can't blame black people for that because, again, black people didn't control real estate agencies. We didn't approve the mortgages. We didn't control that infrastructure, that economic infrastructure. Same with the credit. We didn't control that. And everybody wants to sit there and get mad at black people and use black people as a scapegoat, but I'm sorry, not going to be able to do it this time. This has been something that white folks and non-black folks have been doing time and time again. They want to go and blame black people for all the problems that happen in the country that they create, and they want to just go out and attack and have an excuse for beating up on black people and taking their frustrations out on black people. Well, that's not going to solve the problem. What's going to solve the problem is Americans coming to realize that the way that they spend money is completely dysfunctional. And it's been dysfunctional for 30 years. The way Americans spend money, it's just illogical and insane. Everybody's been living on credit and loans, and now that the loans have come due and they haven't been able to pay them, now they're getting upset and they want to take out their frustrations on black people. I'm sorry, you're not going to be able to do it this time, and more black people need to come out and just say, look, this is the reason why you are the way you are is because of what you did. Because I'm a firm believer in personal responsibility. If you make bad decisions, then you need to take responsibility for the bad decisions you made. And most Americans have been making bad decisions with money for the last 30 years. From the top to the bottom, most Americans have no idea on how to spend money. I mean, savings in this country are at an all-time low. Nobody is saving money. Nobody is putting things away for a rainy day. Everybody is spending their money on conspicuous consumption. And this conspicuous consumption is what's doing the damage to our economy. A lot of us think that because 2/3 of the economy is based on consumption, that's a good thing. No, it's not a good thing. When your economy runs on consumers, it can only grow to a certain point. And what happened is our economy is pretty much nearing the level where it just can't go any further. And we have to create new markets and new industries in order for it to continue growing, because this mess, the way Americans spend money is not helping anything. And nobody's looking at how we spend money and how we approach money and even the type of jobs we're creating, because we even go and we look at your President Clinton, who created this service sector and this service economy back in the 1990s. Nobody wants to look at that part, and they don't want to look at how he messed things up by creating a service economy, because you can't have service without manufacturing to support it. And we sent all of our American manufacturing jobs overseas. So we have no products that we're importing or exporting to other countries, and we have no businesses that we're producing where we're producing products. All of our products are made in China, made in Malaysia, made in other countries. So again, Americans can't blame black people for that. Again, we are not CEOs. We are not executives who have decision-making skills over that. That was white folks. That was not us. So you can't really blame us. I mean, the only chief executive we've had in the last, I say, couple of years was Barack Obama. He was the only executive. And yes, he made some screwed up policies. I'll say that he screwed up badly. I'll say that his Obamacare is a complete failure. I'll say that his, many of his foreign policies, like the one for the Iran nuclear deal, are really screwed up. I'll say that he's inexperienced, and he never should have been president in the first place, and that he really is an empty suit, because a lot of people, they get mad at Barack Obama for being president, and they're getting mad at black people, but again, he's an empty suit. And if anybody really looks at it, he hasn't really done anything for black people at all. I mean, he went all the way to Africa to pledge money for Kenya, but 93% of African Americans voted for this man, and this man did nothing for them. And people getting mad at black people, talking about they want to have a race war, they want to kill niggers, that's not going to end anything, and then make anything constructive. Again, if white people want to be mad at someone, they have to look in the mirror and look at the person who made this country messed up. It wasn't black people who messed it up. Again, 12% of the population, 20 million people could not have messed this up as bad as those white folks who messed it up. I mean, if you want to get mad at someone, get mad at those CEOs who created the subprime mortgage mess. Get mad at those CEOs who run the investment banks. Get mad at those CEOs who ran the savings banks. Get mad at your William Jefferson Clinton, who signed the law that repealed the Glass-Steagall Act that allowed investment banking and that allowed investment bankers to come into savings banks. Get mad at um, your George W. Bush for starting an Iraq war he could not afford and that destabilized the Middle East. If you really want to get mad at someone, get mad at these white people. But again, most of these racists are too cowardly to engage those rich white people and hold them accountable for their decisions, and they're too chicken to go and confront their own bad spending habits and curtail them so that they can have a savings. None of these people want to take any responsibility, but they want to put it all on the shoulders of your Barack Obama. Now, I am not a fan of this black president, but I will look at the policies I will hold him accountable for the policies that he had a hand in, but I'm not going to hold him accountable for the whole screwed up state of this country. That was done by white people. That was done by white liberal policy and even some conservative policy. I'll say it was done by both. And it was done by private enterprise, which got too greedy and now is stuck with a country that they can't get into gear. This is all, everybody's fault, and everybody needs to take responsibility for their part. You really can't blame a Negro for making this country the mess that it's in. Again, we don't control those banks. We don't control big business. We don't even have enough political power to even get policy to help us out. I mean, look at the cases of Michael Brown and Trayvon Martin. Our black president did nothing for black people. So to say that he's responsible for the state of the country and that black people are responsible for the mess that the country's in, that's a lie. And that's the same type of lie that was told to poor whites way back in the Depression, back in the 1920s and not the 1920s, but the 1930s, and that led to the lynchings of numerous black people. And even after the Civil War, they were still blaming black people for the state of the country, when it was, again, rich white people who started the Civil War, and it was rich white people who were buying stocks on margin that led to the collapse of the stock market in 1929. How can a poor Negro have anything to do with any of those situations? But because frustrated white people are too scared to go and confront these white people, rich white people, they go and attack black people. And I say that has to stop. If you really want to hold somebody accountable, you go after those white people you have an issue with. Because here in America, we are the only country in the world that has not prosecuted any of these CEOs for that subprime mortgage mess. We have not prosecuted any of those CEOs for that financial collapse of 2007. We have not held anyone accountable on any level. I mean, the rest of the world has pretty much put those people in jail, and they're trying to rebuild their countries by creating policy that prevents another one of these collapses. But here in America, we're sitting around playing the old shuck and jive, blame and shame game, where we continue to point fingers at people and trying to blame black people for a problem that, again, black people had no hand in whatsoever. So, I look at your Barack Obama, I can't blame him for everything, but I can look at white folks who created these policies and I can hold them accountable for the mess that they made. When I look at this America, again, you can't blame Barack Obama for everything. And attacking black people doesn't make the problem go away, because the problem, at the end of the day, you can kill as many black people as you want, you can brutalize as many black people as you want, but the problems in white America are still going to remain there. And those problems, again, are not going to change unless white folks start looking in the mirror and taking responsibility for themselves and saying, look, I made this mess, and now I have to clean it up. I have to start looking at the way I'm spending money. I have to start looking at the way my economy runs. And, I have to start holding people accountable from top to bottom. If my congressman is not voting in my best interest, it's time for me to get rid of that congressman. It's time for us to get together and vote this guy out of office. If this mayor is not doing what we need to do, we need to get him out of office. But sitting there and blaming black people does not make things better for white people. All it does is make white people more miserable and codependent. And codependency is a dysfunctional way of life, because codependent people, all they do is point fingers at each other. And while they're continuing to point fingers at each other and trying to get that position of the victim, the direction of the country continues to go down into a downward spiral until it hits rock bottom. And sadly, I believe that most of America is pretty much going to have to hit rock bottom before it wakes up and realizes that, you can't keep blaming black people for the problems that go on in America. That everybody has, in order for this to be a free society, everybody has to be responsible for themselves and they have to take responsibility for their actions. And if you continue to make bad decision after bad decision, then that's your fault. I mean, if you know you're only making $25,000 a year or $30,000 a year, you know you can't afford a home. If you know you're making $50,000 a year, you know you can't afford a home. And if you know these things, then why would you go get a mortgage? Or if you know you're making X amount of dollars, then why are you trying to go to an expensive university? Because that's another thing that really messed up the economy is we have all these students who are going to expensive colleges, and now they're stuck with student loans that they can never pay for the rest of their lives. It's just like that whole subprime mortgage mess, where we had people buying homes, and then all that did was saturate the market with more. When the market became saturated with more homes, the value of their homes became less than the mortgage that they actually initially took out. And the same thing with the student loans. And all these people are making these bad decisions, but then they want to say it's Barack Obama's fault. Barack Obama made this mess. And you can't really blame Barack Obama for the sad state of affairs that America's in. The big problem that I see, again, is that Americans just don't know how to spend money and they don't know how to manage money. And they think that they're going to spending money for today for a better tomorrow, not understanding that you have to have a plan for tomorrow before you spend any money today. And this is where the big problem lies. Everybody's looking for jobs and nobody's looking to create new businesses. America really needs new innovators, new creators, and people who can create new infrastructure because our infrastructure and our businesses are obsolete and we're not really competitive. And this is something that people of all races are going to have to get together and work on. And there's something that we're going to have to focus on. And this is the only way we're going to get changed because we have to realize that the approaches to business, fiscal policy, political policy, and legal policy, all of it has to change because, it's not going to, the way we're working is not going to work out. The things we're doing aren't working. And it's time again for a new approach because it's a new century and we have to do things differently. And what most Americans are going to have to realize is that change it may have been a slogan for Barack Obama, but for us, change is going to have to be something real because it's something we're going to have to do for ourselves. And change again starts with each of us taking a look at ourselves and saying that we're responsible for our country and the direction our country goes into, not the people in Washington, not the people who are your mayors or your representatives. Change starts with us because the first three words in the Constitution are "we the people," and we the people have to start taking action towards changing the country so it can go in a direction that we want it to go into, and stop blaming black people for all the problems because all these racists, what they're doing is deflecting because again they don't want to take responsibility for what they caused this turn this country to be. It was all of our bad spending, all of our bad money mismanagement, and us listening to leaders who don't want to lead. It's time for Americans, if you really want change, you're going to have to take the lead in your own life, and you're going to have to start change with yourself.